Hi, my name is Thais Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about why it can be hard to notice abuse taking place in relationships. So this is really important, and specifically I'm focusing here on like the mental emotional components of abuse. Obviously, physical abuse is a little more obvious, and I would absolutely highly stress that it's extremely important if you find any form of physical abuse in a relationship to leave immediately. Now, when we're talking about emotional and mental abuse, the same thing applies. It is not a good situation to stay in, point blank, period, and is really important to leave immediately. But why I wanted to do some videos about this and create a series about this is that I find that people often don't even recognize when they're in an emotionally abusive situation. And it's because a lot of these things that take place, whether the abuser is conscious about this or whether this is a subconscious strategy the abuser uses to get their needs met in a relationship, I find that a lot of people have no recognition that they're being abused, or they sort of have moments of lucidity and recognizing, but then sort of go back to at times even denying or protecting the abuser. So there tend to be 5 key reasons that people stay in abusive relationship dynamics, and it's really important to learn about these so that we can recognize abuse that may be occurring not just in one-to-one relationships, but that can be occurring in a workplace, that can be occurring in a friend group, that can be occurring with an entity. There's many different variations that this can take place within, and it's just important to recognize. So number one, people often stay in abusive dynamics or don't realize that they're being abused and don't recognize because it can be too hard to see these things taking place over time. You'll notice that anything related to mental emotional abuse, it doesn't go from 0 to 60. You won't see somebody, for example, in a one-to-one relationship go from the love bombing phase or you're building all these positive subconscious associations to somebody, into the relationship you have with them, immediately into some form of abusive phase. You'll see it sort of take place in little increments over time. It's like sort of the dynamic of incrementalism. And usually what's happened is by the time that we see these incremental abusive components take place, we've already built some kind of attachment to a person. And because the subconscious mind associates attachment as being safe, as being something that gets our needs met, as being, things that meet our basic human needs for certainty, for love and connection, for growth with another person, for novelty of trying new things with a person, because we get so many needs from relationships, then when we have this incremental set of negative things take place, the subconscious mind will sometimes try to protect its needs at the expense of basically ignoring major red flags or huge pain points or non-negotiables that may be taking place. And human beings are very adaptable over time. And so as these incremental components are taking place, sometimes we get used to them without, even consciously realizing. So there can be this major form of cognitive dissonance that takes place when, especially when we've built all these positive emotional associations to somebody or something. And then when it feels like all of a sudden that's being threatened or challenged, it can actually just be a lot easier to stay in some form of denial. And the really interesting dynamic here too, especially as it relates to one-to-one relationships, is we have something called trait variety. And so basically subconsciously, we are likely to attach to our repressed traits. We feel attracted to people expressing things that we're suppressing or repressing. And so what we'll often see in these dynamics is that when we have somebody that let's just say historically, if somebody's really smart and really strong and they team up together, they're more likely to survive. And it's a big point of like what actually creates attraction between people at the subconscious level. And so sometimes we have this deep attachment to somebody where we at a deeper level associate that they're going to be, a reason we survive if we hang on to them. And so sometimes we can have like these attachments built around somebody, beliefs about how we view somebody or something really intertwined. And we don't want that like worldview to be challenged or a relationship worldview to be challenged because we've attached. And again, the subconscious mind will actually filter out information when it's trying to get its needs met. And so it's easy to say, oh, I didn't like this thing happen, but I'm getting my needs met from it. So I'm just going to filter out this thing and just focus on the need itself. And so this can be a huge reason why we may not notice what's taking place, because the reticular activating system of your brain can actually filter out that information. Number 2 is that intermittent reinforcement plays a huge role in the system of emotional abuse. Now, There was an experiment done a long time ago. And if you look at like gamblers, for example, this is so much of what they're addicted to is the dopamine output as a result of intermittent reinforcement. And if you look at intermittent reinforcement in and of itself, the best experiment that illustrates this is there were a bunch of rats basically put in like a rat park by researchers. And what they would do is they would let these rats go up to levers and push the lever so that food pellets would come out. And what they would see and observe is that rats would go out, push the lever, food pellet would come out, then they go back and return to the rat park and move on with their lives. Then they stopped putting the food pellets out. And the rats essentially hovered around the food pellet machine for a little while, or lever, and eventually returned and realized, okay, the food pellets just aren't coming because they consistently weren't coming out. So they realized, okay, my belief that it's going to be here is not valid, so I'm going to move on. Then what they did is they took the food pellets and they put them in intermittently. So they would put them in every 5 times, 12 times, 27 times. And what they found is because of the rats not being able to recognize, oh, whenever I push the lever, it comes out, or whenever I push the lever, it stops coming out. There was no consistency on either side. That intermittency caused the rats to basically just hover around the food pellet machine for prolonged periods of time, give up on grooming, mating, interacting with other rats in the park, and just obsessively focus on the lever, because there was this intermittency that can be so addictive. It's like that dopamine response when the food pellet finally does come out is so strong. Now, why I'm telling you this is because this is really prevalent when it comes to our relationship dynamics. A lot of individuals get really intertwined with like the abusive relationship dynamics that may be taking place. And when they get that intermittent reinforcement, those moments of promises that are going to happen, those moments of, oh, we'll do this soon, and this is coming soon, or those moments of just like having some kind of positive emotional association. The person does give you love. The person does show up. And again, this can be in a workplace too. This can be in an entity or institution. This can occur in many different forms. But whenever there's that like intermittency, we often get hooked. And we can get so hooked on that positive from something we expect to be negative, or we're not sure when it's going to be positive or negative. We can get so hooked on like the potential future of that positive reinforcement again, that we can, again, filter out these negative things that are taking place because we get so consumed with the potential intermittent reinforcement. And so this is another huge reason people don't recognize the abuse that may be taking place in their lives. Now, by the way, we're going to put another video out, and it's going to be all about literally just reprogramming the imprints left from abuse. But if you want to do a deep dive into a free course that will help to reprogram some of the output of abuse, if you've found yourself in an emotionally abusive situation in the past and you want to do some healing work now, a very powerful course for this is our emotional mastery and belief reprogramming course. You can try for free for 7 days. And you can use the link in the description box below. And like 7 days, you can get through a course. Like there's lots in there. So please check it out if you want to do a deeper dive into this. Number 3 is people can fear being independent, fear having to be on their own. Abuse makes us sort of dependent on somebody in an emotional way over time. And so then the fact or the idea that that person's not going to be there to control us or direct us can actually feel abandoning. It can feel like, well, we're alone. I don't know how to deal with the situation. I feel unsafe without this person because, and this is literally bringing us to number 4, they're kind of going together. The subconscious mind really wants to maintain its comfort zone. So once we've attached to somebody and once there's a repetition of like some form of attachment that takes place there, we don't want that to be threatened because we associate comfort and safety with familiarity. And so we can have this fear of leaving either because we have, really painful past stored associations, like maybe fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, these sorts of things that maybe from our history, maybe in childhood, we developed abandonment wounds and so on. But also the subconscious mind can also just get attached and then really not want to have to go through the pain and fear of breaking that attachment and feeling really raw and on our own and sort of unsafe and like we have to fend for ourselves. And what this actually does is because neuroscience has proven every single decision we make is emotional, it's almost like abusive relationships discourage critical thinking. It's almost like because we get so emotionally invested in things, it can be so hard to leave that thing for people, or so hard to really notice And we'll see a lot of people, again, stay in denial sometimes about what's taking place. So it's really important to like use that past video that we put out yesterday that has everything to do with the 15 major signs of abuse in relationships, and really evaluate, is this me being emotionally abused in a relationship, in an institution, with an entity, or whatever it might be that's taking place in your life, so that we can then know, okay, I understand why it's been hard for me to see this, and here are some tools that I can use to move on. And again, emotional mastery course will be great for that. And I'm going to put out a video tomorrow. And last but not least, we can really fear not having our needs met, not having the, you'll see with any abusive dynamic, there's some kind of need that's being met for you in some way that we've attached to, and that we tend to want to protect, that we tend to fear losing. And so again, we become protective, not necessarily of just the relationship to the person that may be treating us very poorly, but of our relationship in general to the need. Like, I don't want this need here to be threatened. And especially the more we think that this person is providing us with a sense of safety, this tends to be a huge form of where emotional abuse can take place. If we think, oh, this person's keeping me safe at the end of the day, or protecting me, which you'll see is a big function in the abuse dynamic in relationships, or if we think that somebody's here and they're the only person that's going to love me, or the only person that's going to meet my need for connection, the more we have that idea that this person's the only one with the answers, they're the only person keeping us safe, the more we have that and believe that, the more afraid we become to let that go, and the more protective we become of those needs. So please stay tuned for the next video if you're finding yourself in this situation at all. And we're going to talk about how to break this and how to get out of this situation. But again, please know that my advice to anybody experiencing this is to leave the situation as efficiently as possible, and to not be afraid to seek out help. And also we'll put some extra resources for anybody dealing with abuse in the description box below. Thank you so much for being here and for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.